Good evening, brave souls, and welcome to another chilling episode of our scary stories. I'm your host, and I'll be your guide into the depths of terror, where nightmares take shape and the ordinary turns extraordinarily fearsome. Tonight, we embark on a journey to a place beyond the known, where time bends and reality blurs. Gather around, if you dare, for the tale is about to begin. The town of Ravensbrook lay enveloped in a shroud of mist that morning. Its cobbled streets glistened with fresh rain, reflecting the dim light from the lanterns that flickered sporadically along the pathways. As dawn threatened to break, an eerie silence dominated, interrupted only by the distant murmur of Ravensbrook River and the caw of a raven overhead. Tom, a strapping young journalist with a hint of stubble and piercing blue eyes, stepped into Ravensbrook's old cafe, the Whispering Willow. As he pushed open the door, a bell chimed, causing a few elderly locals to lift their heads. They were the living relics of Ravensbrook, who carried in their eyes stories older than the town itself. Their murmured conversations were as much a part of the cafe's atmosphere as the aroma of freshly baked pies and the pungent scent of aged wood. Morning, Tom greeted Marion, the cafe's owner, her plump face breaking into a warm smile. Her fingers were dusted with flour, and she wiped them on her apron before continuing. The usual. He nodded, taking a seat near the window. Through the condensed glass, he saw the world outside just as one might see a dream, hazy, distant, and a tad out of reach. As he sipped his coffee, he overheard snippets from a conversation between two of the older patrons, Mr. Jenkins and Mrs. Hattie. Their voices were hushed, the way people spoke when they talked of things not meant for all ears. "Aye, it's said that it's returned," Mr. Jenkins muttered, a hint of worry clouding his weathered face. "Balderdash," Mrs. Hattie scoffed, though her tone was more of fear than disbelief. "It's just an old tale, nothing more." Curiosity piqued, Tom leaned in slightly, trying to catch more of their conversation. He was always on the lookout for tales that could be turned into stories for his column. "The station, Hattie," Mr. Jenkins persisted. "People are saying they've seen it, right there, near the bend where the river curves." Tom's heart raced. The station at World's End was a tale he had heard whispers of but had always dismissed as a town myth. "They say it's a passage," Mrs. Hattie whispered, her fingers fidgeting with her lace shawl. "A passage to places unknown, realms unimaginable. And who returns from such a journey?" Mr. Jenkins asked, his voice carrying a weighty dread. Mrs. Hattie shook her head, her silver hair shimmering in the dim light of the cafe. "None, if you believe the tales." Tom couldn't resist any more. He interjected, "Excuse me, Mr. Jenkins, Mrs. Hattie. I couldn't help but overhear. This station, have either of you seen it?" The two exchanged glances. Mr. Jenkins leaned in, his breath smelling of tobacco and mint. "Son, some things are best left as stories. Seeking them out, well, that might be a ticket with no return." But Tom was a man driven by stories, by the adrenaline of uncovering the truth. The more he was cautioned, the deeper he wanted to delve. That evening, as the sun dipped and twilight cast its enchanting veil over Ravensbrook, Tom found himself drawn to the river bend. Whether it was sheer curiosity or the inexorable pull of a legend, he couldn't say. All was silent save for the haunting lullaby of the river. Then, just as the world seemed to hold its breath, a dense fog began to envelop the area, and the vague outline of a platform emerged from the mist. There it was, the station at World's End. Tom's heart thundered in his chest, echoing the allure of a mystery that beckoned him forth, promising a story unlike any other. The call was impossible to resist, and so he stepped closer. As the fog curled around his ankles, Tom's footsteps sounded muffled on the damp earth. The platform before him was draped in an ethereal glow, the origins of which were indiscernible. Lampposts lining the platform emitted a soft, otherworldly light, illuminating the space just enough to see but not enough to dissipate the shadows lurking at the edges. Adjacent to the platform stood an ornate, yet age-worn signboard with chipping paint that read, "Welcome to the station at World's End." Below it, in finer script, the words, "Where will the journey take you?" A cold breeze whispered past, sending a shiver up Tom's spine and making the nearby lanterns sway gently. The air was thick with a metallic scent, reminiscent of freshly fallen rain and something more arcane. There were several passengers already waiting, their faces shrouded by the mist and the dim light. They stood still, with an aura of resigned anticipation, like souls caught in the web of an old tale, awaiting their next chapter. A distant chugging grew progressively louder, and before long, a train, unlike any Tom had seen, slid into view. Its body, gleaming with a silver sheen, seemed to both blend with and defy the fog around it. The wheels barely made a sound on the tracks, and the entire entity radiated an almost hypnotic allure. The doors slid open with a silent grace, revealing a plush interior lit by the same soft luminescence as the lampposts. Tom watched as the waiting passengers, without a word, began boarding the train, each one vanishing into its embrace. His journalistic instincts were battling his innate sense of caution. Every fiber of his being knew that boarding this train might alter the course of his life forever. But the allure of the unknown, the potential stories and truths waiting to be unraveled, gnawed at his resolve. As he hesitated, a figure detached itself from the shadows, a conductor clad in a deep blue uniform adorned with golden buttons that shimmered. But his face, or the lack of it, gave Tom pause. It was a blank canvas, devoid of eyes, nose, or mouth, just smooth skin. The faceless conductor extended a gloved hand toward Tom, gesturing for him to board. His voice, surprisingly warm and rich, broke the silence. It's time. All aboard for the journey to the unknown. Overwhelmed by a mixture of dread and excitement, Tom found himself stepping onto the train, the doors sliding shut behind him, sealing his fate. Inside, the train was a paradox, modern yet timeless. Plush red velvet seats juxtaposed against sleek metal accents. Each compartment was separated by curtains that whispered secrets of their own. Another passenger, a young woman with raven black hair and piercing green eyes, took the seat opposite Tom. She gave him a tight-lipped smile, her gaze heavy with an unspoken history. "First time?" she asked, her voice carrying a note of sympathy and understanding. Tom nodded, swallowing hard. "Is it always like this?" The woman leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Every journey is different. But remember this, the station at World's End is not just a place. It's an experience, a test. And not everyone comes back the same." The train lurched forward, setting forth on a journey into the abyss of the unknown. The rhythmic motion of the train felt like a heartbeat, lulling the occupants into a tranquil stupor. A hum of the wheels on the tracks became a gentle mantra that wrapped around Tom, causing the boundaries of reality and dream to blur. A woman, sensing his unease, introduced herself. "Lila," she said, offering a small smile. Tom nodded, trying to find words. "Tom, have you been on this journey before?" Lila hesitated for a moment, her green eyes clouding over. "Yes, but each trip is unique. The station, it taps into your deepest fears, desires, and memories. It shows you realms crafted from fragments of your very soul." A sudden jolt interrupted their conversation. The train seemed to shiver, the lights flickering briefly. Lila grasped Tom's hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "We're transitioning," she whispered. Outside, the scene had shifted. The once opaque mist now cleared to reveal vast landscapes. Towering mountains rose into the sky, their peaks obscured by thick clouds. Valleys, filled with fluorescent flora that seemed to pulse with life, stretched out beneath. Skies of indigo and crimson danced overhead, occasionally illuminated by streaks of green lightning. Tom, captivated, pressed his face against the cold glass. Every sight was a blend of the familiar and the bizarre. Forests of silver-leaved trees waved in the non-existent breeze, and creatures, both majestic and monstrous, roamed freely. As the scenery whisked by, Lila's voice was a grounding presence. "These are echoes of realities that might have been, or perhaps will be. Every passenger sees something different." "What do you see, Tom?" Tom hesitated, his gaze locked on a dilapidated mansion that closely resembled his childhood home. "I see fragments of my past, but they're twisted, changed." Lila nodded. "The train doesn't just traverse physical realms. It takes you through the landscapes of your psyche, making you confront what lies within." A sudden scream pierced the air, jolting Tom upright. It came from a few compartments down. Lila tightened her grip on Tom's hand, her face turning ashen. "That wasn't supposed to happen," she murmured. Curiosity battling concern, Tom and Lila cautiously made their way toward the source of the scream. They pulled back the curtain of the compartment from which the scream had emanated. Inside, a man writhed on the floor, his eyes wide with terror. Surrounding him, like ghostly apparitions, were shadowy figures, reminiscent of people but distorted, their features elongated and twisted. Tom recognized them immediately. They were manifestations of despair, guilt, and grief, emotions and memories given form. A man's voice came out in ragged gasps. "Make them stop, please." Lila, her face etched with determination, began murmuring an incantation. The shadows, repelled by her words, began to dissipate. Within moments, the man was left panting, the remnants of his tormentors vanishing like smoke. Lila helped him sit up. "You have to control your emotions here. This train, it feeds off them, materializes them. Keep your mind calm." Tom, his journalist instincts kicking in, asked, "What are these realms? How does this train exist?" The man, still catching his breath, glanced at him. "Some say it's a creation of ancient forces, a bridge between realities. Others believe it's a sentient being, testing and toying with us." Lila added, "No one truly knows. But remember, the journey is as much internal as it is external." The train continued on, its path undetermined, its destination unknown. But for Tom, the real journey had just begun. The dim luminescence of the train car provided little comfort to Tom as he navigated the narrow corridor. Every compartment held a story, every curtain concealed a world. Lila's words from earlier resonated within him. The journey is as much internal as it is external. But nothing could have prepared him for what lay ahead. Finding an unoccupied compartment, Tom and Lila settled in, hoping for a brief respite. But the serenity of the moment was shattered when a cold breeze ruffled the curtains, despite the sealed windows. Drawn by an unseen force, Tom glanced outside. The landscape had shifted to a vast, endless ocean. The water was obsidian black, reflecting the stars in the night sky above. But it was what lurked beneath that held his gaze. Silhouettes of gargantuan creatures moved under the surface, their forms only hinted at by the moonlight. Lila, following his gaze, whispered, "The Sea of Lost Dreams. It's said to contain the hopes and dreams of those who've journeyed here, either lost to the depths or waiting to be reclaimed." As Tom continued to gaze out, a face, eerily familiar yet twisted with anguish, emerged from the water. It was his mother. Her eyes pleaded silently, hands reaching out for him. Tom recoiled, his heart pounding. He knew his mother was long gone, but the pain and guilt of not being there in her final moments had always haunted him. Lila, seeing his distress, gently pulled him away. "The train, it's showing you what you regret, what you yearn for. But you must remember, it's not real." Despite her words, Tom couldn't shake off the feeling. The visions were too visceral, the emotions too raw. Wanting to divert his mind, he decided to explore the train further. A few compartments down, muted conversations reached his ears. Peeking inside, he found a group of passengers huddled together, each recounting their experiences. A middle-aged woman, her face lined with grief, spoke. "I saw my son. He looked just as he did before the accident. But his eyes, they accused me." A young man with a faraway look added, "I was in a city built from my forgotten ambitions. Every building, every street was a path I never took." As the passengers shared, a pattern emerged. Each vision, each world, was a reflection of the individual's deepest regrets, unfulfilled desires, or unresolved emotions. Lila, sensing the growing unease, spoke up. "The key to navigating this journey is to face these manifestations, to confront and understand them." "But how?" Tom asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lila looked him in the eyes by acknowledging them, accepting them, and moving forward. "We cannot change the past, but we can choose how it defines us." The train continued its enigmatic journey, but for the passengers, the real challenge lay in traversing the terrains of their souls. The hours melted into each other, and the concept of time itself seemed to warp aboard the train. The atmosphere grew tense as passengers whispered of a figure that patrolled the corridors late into what could be considered night on this timeless vessel. The conductor. Tom hadn't encountered him yet, but descriptions from the others painted an eerie picture. Tall, dressed in a pristine uniform from an era long gone, with eyes that gleamed with an unnatural light. He was neither hostile nor friendly, but was known to approach passengers with a singular question, one that could change the course of their journey. Lila, who had grown increasingly protective of Tom, warned him, if the conductor approaches, answer his question truthfully, no matter how strange or personal it might seem. Deception only leads to darker realms. Tom nodded, intrigued and apprehensive. The whispers about the conductor's game had reached his ears. A question for a question, and the price for an incorrect answer was unknown but feared by all. as the train glided through a dense forest of trees with leaves resembling shards of crystal, casting prismatic glows. The door to their compartment slid open. The conductor stood there, his very presence casting a chill in the room. Thomas Miller, his voice, deep and melodious, seemed to echo in Tom's mind. Tom gulped, finding his voice. Yes. The conductor's eyes bore into Tom's. What is your deepest regret? Tom's mind raced. Thoughts of his mother, his abandoned dreams, lost love, and missed opportunities flashed before him. Taking a deep breath, he decided on the truth. Not being there for my mother during her final moments. The conductor's gaze remained unblinking, and then he nodded slightly. Your turn, Thomas Miller. One question. Emboldened, Tom asked, what is the purpose of this train? Where does it truly go? A faint smile crossed the conductor's lips. This train travels through the maze of the soul to destinations shaped by the psyche. Its purpose, a reflection, a challenge, an opportunity. As for its true destination, that's for you to discover. Without another word, he left, leaving Tom and Lila in contemplative silence. Tom's heart still raced, but he felt a weight lifted. By confronting his regret, a part of him felt lighter. Lila looked at Tom, admiration evident in her eyes. You faced him and his game bravely. Many don't come out of it so unscathed. Tom exhaled, leaning back in his seat. I've faced many challenges in my career, but this is unlike any other. This journey, it's making me confront things I've buried deep within. Lila squeezed his hand, offering comfort. That's the nature of the station at World's End. It challenges, it terrifies, but it also offers a chance for redemption. Outside, the crystal forest gave way to a vast desert with dunes that glowed under a twin moon sky. But Tom felt more grounded, more prepared for the challenges ahead, and more determined to uncover the mysteries of the ever-shifting train. The sandy waves of the glowing desert seemed unending, each dune looking eerily similar to the next. This vast expanse reflected the stark contrast of the train's interior, teeming with life and stories. As Tom and Lila gazed out, a thought persisted in Tom's mind. Was this desert symbolic of his own inner emptiness? A shiver ran down Lila's spine, though there was no change in the temperature. Something's different about this place, she murmured, her voice hesitant. Tom could feel it too, an undercurrent of unease. Then, the desert's mirage started revealing itself. Fleeting images of events from Tom's past danced across the dunes, moments of joy, sorrow, anger, and love. It was a tapestry of memories, interwoven with emotions. But among the genuine memories, there were distortions. Scenes Tom couldn't recall experiencing, conversations he'd never had. The desert was trying to manipulate his thoughts, weaving in falsehoods among truths. Lila tightened her grip on the windowsill. It's trying to confuse us, Tom. This desert, it's a realm of deception. Determined not to let the desert's illusions sway him, Tom decided to focus on a singular memory, the day he'd first met Lila. They had been assigned as partners on a difficult case, and their bond had strengthened over time. As he held onto that memory, the fake ones began to fade, replaced by the authentic moments they had shared. However, as the illusions dissipated for Tom, the desert seemed to become more aggressive in its approach towards Lila. Her memories started getting warped, leading to visible distress on her face. Tom, her voice wavered. I'm seeing things. Events that never happened. It's twisting my past, making me doubt everything. Tom held onto Lila, grounding her with his presence. Focus on a true memory, Lila. Hold on to it. Don't let the desert's lies overshadow it. With a deep breath, Lila recalled her childhood. The simple moments of joy playing in her grandmother's garden. The scent of fresh roses, and the comforting touch of her grandmother's hand. As she clung to this memory, the deceptive mirages began to wane. As the last of the illusions faded, the train began to slow down. The once glowing dunes now stood dark and silent under the twin moons. A massive structure, reminiscent of an ancient temple, loomed in the distance. Its stone facade bore intricate carvings, depicting scenes of various realms and the train's journey through them. Tom and Lila exchanged a glance, realizing this was their next stop. We've faced the depths of the ocean and the deception of the desert, Lila whispered, determination in her voice. Whatever lies within that temple, we'll face it together. Their bond, tested and strengthened, would be their beacon as they ventured into the unknown, prepared for the challenges that the temple at the heart of the desert would present. As the train came to a halting stop, the door to their compartment slid open, revealing the grandeur of the temple before them. The structure was vast, its stone walls emanating an age-old wisdom. Torchlights, burning with a blue flame, illuminated the entrance, casting elongated shadows that seemed to dance with anticipation. Tom and Lila cautiously stepped out, their footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness. The entrance was an archway decorated with mosaic tiles, each depicting an eye. It felt as though they were being watched, judged even, by the very walls of the temple. The interior of the temple was a sprawling labyrinth, with corridors branching off in all directions. At its heart was a massive chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness. In the center of this chamber stood a pedestal, atop which rested an ornate hourglass, its sands trickling slowly. An old woman, her back bent with age but her eyes sharp and clear, stood beside the hourglass. Her voice, though frail, carried an authority that was impossible to ignore. "Welcome, travelers. To move forward, you must make a choice." Lila frowned. What choice? The old woman gestured to the hourglass. "Time is the most precious commodity. Here, you must sacrifice a memory, a significant one, to proceed. But be warned, once given, the memory will be lost forever." Tom's heart raced. Memories were what made a person, defined them. To give one up was no trivial matter. Lila, her face pale, whispered, "I'll go first." Closing her eyes, she touched the hourglass. A tear slid down her cheek as she withdrew her hand. "It's done." Tom looked at her, concern evident in his eyes. "What did you give up?" Lila looked lost for a moment, then shook her head. "I can't remember. That's the price." Taking a deep breath, Tom approached the hourglass. His mind raced through pivotal moments, childhood days, first love, successes, failures. Finally, he settled on a memory and, with a heavy heart, touched the hourglass. The weight of loss was immediate, a void where a cherished memory once resided. The old woman nodded approvingly. "Your sacrifices are accepted. You may proceed." As they ventured deeper into the temple, they encountered challenges that tested their resolve, bravery, and wit. Puzzles that required them to work together, traps that preyed on their fears, and illusions that tried to lead them astray. With each test, their bond deepened, their determination grew stronger. However, as they moved forward, the loss of their memories weighed heavily on them, especially Tom. He could feel the void growing, the emptiness threatening to consume him. As they approached what seemed to be the final chamber, a realization dawned on Tom. The monstrous antagonist they were to confront was not some external entity, but the inner demons and the price of the choices they'd made. The chamber's door loomed ahead, and beyond it lay the culmination of their journey, the showdown that would either break or redeem them. The grand chamber's door creaked open, revealing an expanse bathed in a soft, crimson glow. At the room's center stood a magnificent mirror, its frame ornately decorated with motifs of time, memories, and choices. The reflection it showed was not of the chamber but of an old, decrepit train station, eerily similar to the one at World's End. Tom stepped closer, drawn to the mirror, while Lila hesitated, a sense of foreboding making her wary. As Tom's reflection came into view, he saw not his current self but a younger version, standing on the platform, a look of hope and anticipation in his eyes. A voice, smooth and unsettling, echoed in the chamber. "Welcome, Tom. Do you recognize this moment? One of the most crucial crossroads of your life." The scene in the mirror shifted, revealing a younger Lila, tears streaming down her face, begging Tom to stay. Tom remembered this. It was the day he had decided to leave town, to chase a fleeting dream, leaving behind everyone he loved, including Lila. Lila, watching the scene unfold, whispered, "That's the memory I sacrificed." The voice continued, "A memory lost, a choice made. But what if you could change it, Tom? Would you?" The scene shifted again. This time, the younger Tom embraced Lila, choosing to stay. Their lives played out differently, a life filled with love, joy, and shared memories. No mysterious train, no harrowing journey. Tom felt a yearning, a pull towards that life. But then he looked at Lila, the Lila beside him, who had faced the unknown with him, braved unimaginable horrors, and sacrificed a significant part of herself. Their bond, forged in adversity, was real and unbreakable. Resolutely, Tom spoke. "That was a past I chose to leave behind. We've faced the challenges of this journey together, and I wouldn't change a thing." A voice, now tinged with a hint of malice, responded, "Very well, then brace for the consequences." Suddenly, the chamber began to shake. The mirror, once clear, became distorted, the frames of time, memories, and choices breaking apart. Tom and Lila held onto each other, their combined strength resisting the malevolent force trying to tear them apart. As the shaking intensified, the mirror shattered, releasing a monstrous force that lunged at them. Tom, realizing the gravity of the situation, pushed Lila out of harm's way, taking the brunt of the impact. The force consumed him, leaving nothing but an empty space where he once stood. Lila, devastated and heartbroken, knelt on the chamber floor, the weight of their journey and the final, heart-wrenching loss weighing heavily on her. The once magnificent chamber now lay in ruins, a testament to the power of choices and their consequences. As Lila's tears flowed, the remnants of the mirror began to glow, and the train from World's End appeared. It was time to leave, to return to reality. But for Lila, the journey would never truly end. She carried the weight of their shared memories, the joy, the fear, and the devastating heartbreak of losing Tom. The station at World's End had tested them, revealing the true strength of their bond. But it had also taken a price that Lila would forever mourn. And so, dear listeners, we conclude yet another tale from the shadowy realms of the unknown. Remember, the next time you hear the distant whistle of a train or see a station that wasn't there before, tread carefully, for the line between reality and the uncanny is finer than you think. Sleep tight, and until our next eerie encounter on Our Scary Stories, keep an ear out for the whispers in the dark. This is Our Scary Stories signing off for tonight.